Hey, Money Masters. Hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to the Wealth Seed podcast. And today we are going to be talking about investment strategy. We're going to be talking about investment strategy. So, again, welcome to all of you, those of you who are in my Money Mastery for Her private group, and to those of you who are watching on YouTube. I'd like to invite you to become part of the private group if you are on Facebook. So you can search for Money Mastery for Her, or you can just put in MM4H, and you should see the MM4H. Now there's two groups. There's the mission group, the arm of the business that goes on mission trips, and then there is the group where we share money stuff like this, right? So invite you to search that group and check us out. So that's for those of you who are watching on YouTube. All right. So those of you, if you're watching live, just let me know who you are, where you're watching from. I always love to know who's watching, even if you're watching the replay. Love to know who's watching, where you're watching from. Love to hear, your feedback. If you learned something, if you, have any questions or anything like that. Feel free to ask as you are watching the broadcast. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about investment strategy and what should we be doing during this time, like when we have a very volatile time like we're having now, and where we are seeing what we call like a bear market, where the market has been down for a little bit. People kind of get nervous, right? They're not sure, should I move my money? Should I leave it where it is? Is it okay? Is it going to recover? All of these things, right? So we're going to be talking about investment strategy and when you should actually change your investment strategy. But before we do that, we are going to cover today's crazy money story. And I am going to actually share two with you today because they're both they're very short. So the first one that I want to share is really crazy. Sometimes these stories that I share, they're like crazy. Some are sad. Some are, maybe happy stories. And then some are just very interesting, have some really good lessons. So that's from all under crazy money stories, right? So here we go. There was a lady who, both of these are about lottery winners today. So there was a lady who won the lottery, okay? And this was in Europe. So she won the what they call the Euro Millions raffle there. She won a lot. I think it was 1 million like euros. Well, she became stressed from suddenly having a large sum of money, which is interesting because most people think if I just get a large sum of money, I'll be good. You know what I'm saying? But all kinds of money comes with its pros and cons, right? And so for this lady, she was stressed from suddenly having a large sum of money, right? Because her relationships with her family and friends were affected, okay? And this is the case for anybody where money is concerned. And when you get like these big windfalls or these winnings, it can affect your relationships with your family positively or negatively. It all just depends, right? So anyway, her relationships with friends were affected, and despite not going broke, she felt that she was meaningless, with her wealth. That having more money, all of this money now, she just felt even more meaningless, right? And that's very interesting, and it's also important to note because here's what I know about money. When you get more money, or if you lose money, right, and lose lots of money, it's really just going to amplify who you are already. So it's interesting to me that she said that she felt meaningless now with this money. And maybe there's something I'm missing, and I'm being very real about that statement that I just made. Maybe there's something I'm missing that I don't understand. But to me, it seems like you are probably already feeling somewhat meaningless or not very sure of who you were or what your purpose is, and all of that before you got the money, right? And now even more so because you have this money, and now you have these relationships going bad with friends and things of that nature. So anyway, she didn't go broke. But she said that this money now made her to feel meaningless. And so she decided to sue the company that ran the lottery games in the UK, which is Camelot. So she sued them for negligence in providing good advice for someone her age, which she had won these monies, I believe, when she was 17 at the time. Okay. So she sued, charged them with negligence, claimed that it was irresponsible of them to allow someone under 18 years old to buy lottery tickets. So, what do you all think about that story? Like, again, for me, a lot of interesting points here. Because she was 17, it does explain a lot. And so it does reinforce again that perhaps she didn't know who she was yet. She's still growing into herself. Do you think that the lottery company has any um, responsibility in this? I'm not sure that they do, right? I think that whether they sell tickets to someone 17, 18, 21, 31, 51, this could happen to anybody. What she was experiencing, and I think a lot of it has to do because she was 17. But again, if people don't know who they are, where what their purpose is and all that, they can experience that at any age if they run into. So I'm not sure that the company really was responsible for for what she was going through with this money. And she wasn't forced to buy the lottery ticket. She could have, she didn't have to, right? So anyway, that's story number one. Story number two is about another lady who won the lottery, and she won about 17 million. This was back in about the mid 1990s. And within 3 years, she was completely broke. 17 million in the 1990s. Okay. 3 years go by and she's completely broke. You want to know what happened? What happened was her family hounded her for money, and she couldn't say no to them. They bled her dry. And now she doesn't have anything left for herself. She doesn't have anything left to give. And they are still, to this day, giving her a hard time. They won't speak to her because they think that she's just holding out, that she has this stash somewhere that, that she's not allowing them to have access to. Absolutely crazy, right? That you could have 17 million and it all be gone within 3 years. And I mean, it's absolutely crazy, but it's believable when you start thinking about how people could possibly do you when you come into money, right? And you have to be able to set up some boundaries because unfortunately these types of things happen. So she wasn't able to say no to her family, right? Whatever they asked for, whatever they needed, whatever they came begging for, she gave to them. And so certainly now you can see how that 17 million, because listen, we can all sit here and think about how we could spend that kind of money, right? And even though we would think, hey, I'll never go broke, blah, 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 you have to think about it, especially if you're someone like who's around my age and I'm 47. I mean, over our lifetimes, we've made $1 million or $2 million, right? And so it's not that hard. We might think it's really hard, but it really is not that hard. So unfortunately for her, she's broke now, right? And still has family problems because they don't believe her. Ridiculous. So if you should ever come into a windfall or something huge like that, you have to have some boundaries. You have to, like, I have sat down and like, we're now, okay, I would give a certain amount of money to, certain family members. This is the amount of money. That's it. I don't know what what you're going to do with that or what you do or don't take care of or whatever, but that's it. Right. And so, and then you have to, wow, I don't know if I want to bring up this example. Anyway, maybe I'll do it without bringing up names. There's a celebrity who has a lot of money, millions of dollars, and has children. And this celebrity doesn't necessarily help the children these days, like provided all while the children grew up. Even grown one of the grown children was paying for her apartment, for several years, 4 or 5 years or so. Grown now, 4 or 5 years paying for the apartment, then stopped doing that. And people are feeling some type of way about it. They're feeling like, this person isn't any good. And without knowing the whole story, because it could be like, yeah, that's not right, right? But it's also like, well, when does that stop? You know what I'm saying? The children are grown. They got to learn how to do for themselves. Blah blah blah. And so these family situations can get sticky, but you have to set a boundary because they will bleed you dry if you allow them to, right? I also had, and then I'll get on to the topic for today. I had a lady a few years ago to come to me. She had the one was, when I say one, it wasn't through lottery. It was court. She had won a settlement, and it was a nice lump sum of money. She had never had, a lump sum of money in her life before. Now she did right by getting connected with me and putting a plan together to make sure that she did the right thing with this money. We put the plan together. We got so far as to even, um, having the bank to write up the check that she would be using to deposit with an investment company. And that was as far as we got. The check never made it to us to invest for her. And the reason it never made it is because her children, one in particular, um, berated her, and an ex-husband berated her, like took her through the ringer and talked about her so bad about having an advisor, and these advisors just want to take her money and yada. She needed to be giving her money to them, her child, and this ex-husband. I can tell you the whole story. It's really crazy, but long story short, she has nothing now. Nothing. And she's back in the same old situation where she was before. Not hardly making anything, robbing Peter to pay Paul, all of that. And this lady is a little older. Who knows if she'll get another windfall or another opportunity? I don't know, right? But family, again, was her demise. So we've got to be mindful. And when I'm working with my clients, I even talk with them about their children. I'm like, because I find that a lot of my clients, they're trying to do so much for their children that they're suffering themselves. They don't have a retirement. They don't have retirement nest eggs. They don't have emergency funds. They don't have anything because they keep giving and giving and giving and giving to the children. And listen, the Bible says that we need to make provision, not for our children, but for our children's children and to the fourth generation, right? So I'm just going to leave that right there. But interesting stories. Let me know what you think about that. All right, so let's get to our topic. We've got 15 minutes to cover this because I usually like to be on here 30 minutes or less. So let's talk about it, right? This is a time, and it was pretty nerve-wracking for people, okay? Pretty nerve-wracking for people. So most people, especially if you're not very well-versed in investing, don't have much experience with investing, and you could have been investing for 20 years or 5 years. If you don't understand how things work, you're going to be nervous around these times, right? And so what we have is, the market has been pretty, and not just volatile, but it has been down quite a bit, right? So people are like, they see their monies decreasing, okay? So, that would make anybody nervous, right? My monies are decreasing on a daily basis. And is it going to come back? Like, what's going on? Do I need to be taking my money out of here? And so here it depends, right? It depends. So there are two overarching types of strategies, if you will. There's short term, long-term and short-term. Okay. So first you have to determine, okay, well, which strategy have I been in, right? If I'm a long-term investor, meaning I'm not going to be using this money for 10 plus years, then I need not get nervous. I need not be trying to pull money out. In fact, the market being down is actually a very good thing for me, because what that means is that prices are down and that my money, I can buy more shares, particularly if I'm contributing regularly, right? So I didn't just put a lump sum in, but I'm contributing every month, $500, $100, $50, whatever your amount is, $800, $1,000. Every month I'm putting money into this investment. Okay. When you are doing that, the market being down is a great thing for you, because when you're in a long-term strategy, the name of the game is what we call accumulation, right? And I think I've talked about this before, meaning I want to get as many shares as possible. And so when the prices are down, you can get more shares for your money. So if you're in a long-term strategy, no, you don't want to abandon that strategy. Now, you want to keep an eye on things, right? And you keep in contact. If you have an advisor keeping an eye on things with you, you want to kind of keep in contact with them, and because maybe there may be a need to not take money out of the investment, but uh, switch funds, or reallocate or something like that, right? So, but to just pull your money out of the market, no, you don't want to do that, because what's going to end up happening is you're pulling the money out, but now you're selling off your shares, because that's what you do when you pull your money out the market. Now you're selling your shares at a loss. That's not what you want to do. You want to sell your shares at a gain. Okay. So when the market is up, that's when you want to sell your shares. Okay. All right. Now, if you are in the market for the short term, 3 years, okay, maybe 5 years. Okay, so whether that's you're going to retire in this time frame, or you had just you had only, whatever the investment was, maybe it's not retirement, but you just determined that you were only going to have it in the market for a short period of time. Well, yes, then you might want to consider either changing some things up, how you're allocated, or pulling the money out. Okay, if you're that close to the time when you were supposed to be taking it out anyhow, right? Retirement accounts, though, we know that you can't pull them out until 59 and a half, because you get taxed and penalized. So you don't want to do that. Okay. But you can switch up your allocations. So what do I mean when I say switch up your allocations? If you're heavily invested in stock or equities, the same thing, then you might want to now take more of those funds and invest in safer investments like bonds. Okay. And everything comes with a risk. There is no investment that is a guaranteed safe. Okay. Completely 100% safe. It doesn't exist. Okay. But what you can do is, okay, instead of being, maybe you're 80% equities. So maybe instead of being 80% equities now, you may take that down some, right? Maybe now I'm going to move to 50% equities and 50%, bonds, or something like that, right? That's the move that you make if you're if you are dealing with a short-term strategy. Okay. Otherwise, if you're long-term, you're going to leave things as they are. Okay. Because this is what the market does. Every few years, it makes a correction. Every few years, it goes down. Okay. And then it comes back up. Sometimes those down periods last a little longer than others, but it goes back up. Okay. And then it'll be up for a while, and then it'll come back down for a while. This is what the market does. So if you're in it for the long term, that's not a reason to change the strategy. Okay. Only time the strategy should change is if you move to where I'm going to be taking this investment out and living off of this in 3 years or 5 years or 2 years or 1 year or whatever, right? Or that's the only time where you either change up the allocations, or you take it out if you're not going to be penalized. And of course, you want to, check your tax burden and all that, right? Talk with your accountant, CPA about that. All right. So that's like the major rule. Okay. That's the major rule. Long term strategy, this is not the time to be taking money out of the market. Short term, it could possibly mean taking money out of the market, or it could just possibly mean um, reallocating. Okay, how your portfolio is set up. So let's just talk about that a little bit. Your portfolio and what it should be made up of, and what period in your life and all of that. So there have been over the years some different rules of thumb. There's been the rule of 100, which then became the rule of 110, which is now the rule of 120. And basically, what does it say? What does that mean? Any of those numbers, when you hear that, the rule of 100, rule of 110, rule of 120, as it relates to investing, what it says is that you take that number minus your age, and that's going to tell you the amount of um, the percentage of your portfolio that you should have in equities or should be allotted to stocks. Okay, so if you do 120 minus your age, let's say you're 50 years old, okay, then you get 70% of your portfolio is going to be made up of stocks. Okay, now they recommend that the other 30% then goes into either annuities or high grade bonds or government debt or something a little bit more safe, right? Or other assets that are considered to be safe. They recommend that 30% goes there. Okay. So you do the math with your own age, right? Now, the 120, they're even saying, is 120 even still a good idea right now? Because what's going on? Well, we've got inflation rates that are high, right? So that certainly affects some people, maybe it should be 130, right? Because your investments should be keeping up with inflation. And if you have an overwhelming amount of your portfolio in like bonds and things like that, you're probably not really keeping up with inflation, right? Stocks and equities, generally speaking, are going to keep better pace or beat inflation. Okay. Now, they only talk about breaking this up between equities or stocks, same thing, and bonds. Okay. But I personally say that there is a third part to your portfolio. Okay. So you have equities, you have bonds, and then you have alternative investments. All right. So what do I mean by alternative investments? Well, by alternative investments, I mean things like art, real estate, commodities, crypto, all these other um, alternative investments. Okay. I believe that everyone should have a portfolio where you have stocks, bonds, and alternative investments. Okay. The alternative investments, it's interesting to me because when you say commodities, because the commodities then are made up of some of your natural resources like water and oil and minerals and rock like diamond and things like that, right? And it's so interesting to me because in the Bible, and I did a live on this a while ago, the Bible talked about, in the beginning, when you read in Genesis chapter 2, God put Adam in the garden, and he begins to point out to him these different things that he has, resources that he has available to him. He pointed out water. He pointed out resin, which is oil. He pointed out sheetrock, not sheetrock, minerals and rock diamond and all those things, right? And land and all of that. So it's crazy to me that the world doesn't really recommend these things as a staple in your portfolio. And in fact, the world says these things are very Wow, yeah. Okay, I apologize about that. Like I'm gonna have to edit this and do something because it's been several minutes in there, and I don't even know if people had hung on for that. But anyway, I was wrapping up, and one of the family members downstairs, and nobody's admitting to anything, unplugged the unplugged the Wi-Fi. So, anywho, um, what I was saying was, I believe that your portfolio should be made up of the three things. It should be made up of the stocks or equities, should be made up of bonds, and should be made up of the alternative investments. And so, long story short, you could use a 120 rule to still get your number for what you should have in equities. So let's just use that same example we used earlier. The 50-year-old, 20% in equities, and then maybe they should have about 20% in bonds, and then another 10% in alternative investments. I think, for generally speaking, so again, don't take this recommendation and run with it because I don't know your personal situation. But generally speaking, having about 10 to 20% in alternative investments is pretty decent. So, and it could be higher, it could be lower. Again, it just depends on people's situation, right? But I believe that alternative investments should be a staple in everyone's portfolio. When we talk about being diversified, so being diversified in, you got stocks and equities, you got bonds, and then you got alternative investments, further helps that diversification, because especially in times like these, maybe those things, commodities, are doing really well right now. Water, oil, those types of things are doing well right now. Very well right now, right? And they kind of do well typically, generally, but they're doing better in times like these, right? Because these are the things really that people just always need. People always need water. We need oil for a lot of things that we're doing, right? So, and then the reason you might say, well, we don't need like rock, like diamonds and things like that. No, we don't. But what happens is that people are selling off that stuff now because they had it in their portfolio. They can sell it off and, have that money there for cash, which helps them to, make up for what we see was going on with inflation, right? Because you are working this one job, or you have business, you're making a certain amount of income, and now gas has gone up, but your income hasn't gone up. Yeah, let me sell off some of these diamonds, right? And, or some of this art or whatever to help me through these times. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. Once again, I apologize for the interruption, and then I had to figure out how to get back in here. So I apologize for the interruption, but hopefully you've learned something, and we will talk soon. Thank you. This has been the Wealth Seed. I am Lexi Johnson, international speaker, financial coach, consultant, advisor. Have an amazing rest of your day.